The UES Vengeance moved through space like a shadow made solid. Her black hull absorbed light instead of reflecting it, making her almost invisible against the starfield. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge watching the alien fleet grow larger on the main screen as they approached. "Distance to target?" he asked quietly. Lieutenant Ben Taylor checked his instruments. 2 million kilometers in closing, sir. The alien ships are maintaining their formation near Jupiter's orbit. Commander Lisa Hart studied the tactical display. "Jake, look at how they're arranged. It's like they're not even worried about being attacked." She was right. The Zephyrian ships hung in space in a perfect geometric pattern, their crystalline hulls glowing with internal light. They looked beautiful and terrible at the same time, like deadly jewels scattered across the darkness. Admiral Vextar stood in the command center of his flagship, studying reports from his sensor operators. The primitive humans had been quiet for almost 3 days since his demonstration of power. He expected them to surrender at any moment. "Admiral, we're detecting a single vessel approaching from the asteroid region," reported his tactical officer. "It appears to be larger than their previous ships." Vextar barely glanced at the display. "One ship? Perhaps they're bringing their surrender terms." The truth was more complex than either side realized. The Vengeance was using technology that the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered before. Her sensors were scanning the alien ships with techniques that revealed weaknesses the aliens didn't know they had. Chief Engineer Rodriguez monitored the ship's systems from his station in the engine room. "Captain, all systems are running smoothly. Fusion reactors are at optimal output. We're ready for whatever comes next." Jake opened the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to engage an enemy that thinks we're helpless primitives. They destroyed Luna Station and murdered 8,000 innocent people. Today we show them the price of underestimating humanity." In the weapons bay, Lieutenant Sarah Kim made final checks on the railgun systems. Each cannon could fire tungsten slugs at 30% the speed of light. The kinetic energy from a single shot could level a mountain. "Weapons systems are charged and ready, sir," she reported. The Vengeance closed to within 1 million kilometers of the alien fleet. At this range, conventional human weapons would be useless against the advanced alien shields. But the Vengeance wasn't carrying conventional weapons. "Sir, the aliens are hailing us," Ben reported. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. Admiral Vexistar's face appeared on the main display. His expression was calm and confident, the look of someone who had conquered hundreds of worlds without ever losing a battle. "Human vessel, you will prepare to be boarded. Your surrender will be processed according to Imperial law." Jake stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "Admiral, I'm Captain Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. I have a message for you." Vextar's expression didn't change. "Speak your surrender terms, primitive." Jake's voice was calm and cold. "The message is this. You picked the wrong species to mess with." The communication ended and Jake turned to his weapons officer. "Sarah, target their lead destroyer. Let's see how tough their shields really are." The Vengeance's main railgun fired with a sound that vibrated through the entire ship. The tungsten slug crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. It struck the Zephyrian destroyer's shields and punched through them like they weren't there. The alien ship's crystalline hull shattered like glass. Internal explosions ripped through its structure as the kinetic energy tore it apart from the inside. Within seconds, the destroyer was nothing but glowing debris. On the bridge of the alien flagship, every officer stared at their sensors in disbelief. One of their ships had just been destroyed by a single shot from a primitive vessel. "That's impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "Our shields are immune to kinetic weapons." Admiral Vextar felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. For the first time in his life, he was afraid. "All ships, return fire," he ordered. "Destroy that vessel immediately." The alien fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma beams and energy torpedoes filled the space around the Vengeance with deadly light. Any normal human ship would have been vaporized instantly. But the Vengeance's defensive systems came online like a web of death. Point defense lasers tracked incoming fire with computer precision. Particle beams intercepted energy weapons and neutralized them. Shield generators that had been built using principles borrowed from the aliens' own technology absorbed the remaining attacks. Shields holding at 96%, Rodriguez reported from engineering. "Their weapons can't get through our defenses." Jake allowed himself a small smile. "Return fire. All weapons full spread." The Vengeance unleashed hell. Her missile pods opened like metal flowers. releasing swarms of fusion-tipped warheads. Secondary railguns fired in sequence, each shot targeting a different alien vessel. Energy weapons carved through space with deadly accuracy. 3 more Zephyrian ships died in the first exchange. Their advanced technology and superior numbers meant nothing against human weapons designed specifically to kill things like them. Lieutenant Kim coordinated the attack from her weapons station. Direct hits on targets 2, 5, and 7. All 3 are showing critical damage. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries. The alien fleet had every advantage except one. They had never fought an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Where the Zephyrians relied on overwhelming firepower and superior technology, humans had learned to be adaptable. Every system aboard the Vengeance could be reconfigured, rerouted, or pushed beyond its design limits when necessary. Engineering to bridge, Rodriguez's voice came over the comm. The aliens are trying to jam our targeting systems. Should I boost power to the sensor array? Negative, Jake replied. Switch to backup targeting. Use the manual fire control if you have to. The Vengeance's crew adapted to each new challenge the aliens threw at them. When the Zephyrians tried to jam their communications, the humans switched to quantum entanglement transmitters. When plasma fire threatened to overload their shields, they rerouted power from non-essential systems. Admiral Vextar watched his fleet suffer casualties that should have been impossible. His ships were dying one by one against a single primitive vessel that shouldn't have been able to hurt them. How are they doing this? He demanded from his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. Their technology appears to be specifically designed to counter our defenses. Vextar stared at the main screen where another of his cruisers exploded in a ball of fire. The human ship continued its deadly dance through space, destroying everything it targeted while their own weapons seemed to bounce off its hull. For the first time in the Empire's 3,000-year history, a Zephyrian fleet was losing a battle. Sir, we've lost 8 ships, the tactical officer reported. Should we retreat? Vextar's pride wouldn't allow him to run from primitives. Never. Concentrate all fire on their engines. If we can disable their propulsion, we can board them. The remaining alien ships focused their fire on the Vengeance's engine section. Plasma beams hot enough to melt steel struck her aft shields repeatedly. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, Lisa reported, but the main engines are still operational. Jake looked at the tactical display. They had reduced the alien fleet from 27 ships to 16, but the Vengeance was taking damage. Her shields were down to 60% and several weapon systems had been knocked offline. Sarah, how many missiles do we have left? 36 fusion torpedoes, sir. But I'm saving them for something special. Jake nodded. The battle was far from over, but humanity had already proven something important. The Zephyrian Empire could be beaten. The question now was whether the Vengeance could finish what she had started. Admiral Vextar made a decision that would haunt him forever. If he couldn't defeat this single human ship, he would simply destroy their entire planet. All ships, new course. Set heading for the 3rd planet. Sir, what about the human vessel? Vextar's expression was cold with rage. Let them follow us. When they see their homeworld burning, they'll understand the price of defying the Empire. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Ben Taylor's instruments detected the course change immediately. Captain, the alien fleet is breaking off. They're heading directly for Earth. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. The aliens had decided that if they couldn't defeat humanity's protector, they would simply destroy humanity itself. The chase across the inner solar system became a desperate race against time and extinction. Admiral Vextar's remaining fleet burned toward Earth at maximum velocity, their crystalline hulls glowing with the heat of pushed engines. Behind them, the UES Vengeance followed like an avenging angel, her black hull scarred by alien fire but her weapons still deadly. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. The blue marble of humanity's homeworld had never looked more beautiful or more vulnerable. Somewhere down there, 4 billion people were living their normal lives, completely unaware that death was racing toward them from the stars. Time to intercept? Jake asked quietly. Lieutenant Ben Taylor checked his calculations again. 4 minutes until we're in weapons range of the alien fleet, but they'll reach Earth orbit in 3 minutes. Commander Lisa Hart studied the tactical display with growing concern. Jake, the alien flagship is charging some kind of massive energy weapon. It's much larger than what they used on Luna Station. Jake felt his stomach turn cold. The weapon that had destroyed Luna Station had been powerful enough to vaporize an entire space facility. What the aliens were preparing now looked 10 times more powerful. "It's a planet killer," he said quietly. "They're going to crack Earth like an egg." Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, I can give you more speed, but we'll have to push the fusion reactors past their safety limits. There's a good chance we'll lose structural integrity." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These men and women had already risked their lives to defend humanity against impossible odds. Now he was asking them to risk everything on one final gamble. "Do it, Tony. Push everything we have into the engines." The Vengeance's fusion reactors roared to life with power that made the entire ship vibrate. Her hull groaned under stresses it was never designed to handle. In the engine room, Rodriguez watched temperature readings climb into the red zone while he prayed the containment fields would hold. "We're gaining on them," Ben reported, "but it's going to be close." On the bridge of the alien flagship, Admiral Vexistar watched his planet-killer weapon charge to full power. The massive cannon running through the center of his ship was designed to shatter worlds. It had been used to destroy the homeworlds of a dozen species that had dared to resist the Empire. "Weapon charged to 90%, his weapons officer reported. 30 seconds to firing range." Vextar stared at the blue planet growing larger on his screen. The humans had humiliated him by destroying half his fleet with a single primitive vessel, but they would learn that defying the Empire always carried the same price: complete annihilation. "Sir," his tactical officer called out urgently, "the human ship is gaining on us. They'll be in weapons range in 20 seconds. Vextar's expression remained cold. "It doesn't matter. 20 seconds is more than enough time to destroy their world." But Admiral Vextar had made one final mistake in a battle full of them. He had underestimated human desperation and the lengths people would go to protect their home. Jake Morrison opened a communication channel that reached every ship in both fleets. "Admiral Vextar, this is Captain Morrison. You wanted to know what humanity is capable of. You're about to find out." The Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace directly above the alien flagship, having used Earth's gravity well to slingshot into the perfect attack position. Jake had risked everything on a maneuver that should have torn his ship apart, but somehow the Vengeance held together long enough to execute one final attack. "All weapons," Jake ordered with deadly calm. "Fire everything we have." Lieutenant Sarah Kim had been waiting for this moment. Every fusion missile, every railgun slug, every energy weapon aboard the Vengeance fired simultaneously. It was enough firepower to level a continent, all focused on a single target. The alien flagship's shields flared and collapsed under the sustained assault. The Vengeance's weapons found weak points in the crystalline armor that the aliens never knew existed. Railgun slugs punched through the hull like bullets through glass. Fusion missiles detonated inside the ship's vital systems. Admiral Vextar felt his flagship shudder under impacts that should have been impossible. His bridge filled with smoke and sparks as systems overloaded and failed around him. "Damage report," he demanded. "Catastrophic failures on all decks," his tactical officer replied with panic in his voice. "Main power is offline. Weapon systems are destroyed. Hull integrity is failing." Vextar stared at his displays in disbelief. His mighty flagship, the pride of the Imperial fleet, was dying around him. How had primitives accomplished what the Empire's greatest enemies had never managed? "How?" he whispered. "How did they defeat us?" The answer came from Jake Morrison's final transmission. "Because you made the mistake of thinking we were just another species to be conquered. You forgot that humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know how to kill things that think they can't be killed." The flagship's reactor core destabilized under the damage from the Vengeance's attack. Warning sirens screamed throughout the ship as containment fields failed one by one. Admiral Vextar's last thought before the reactor exploded was a simple one. The Empire had awakened something terrible in the darkness between the stars. The explosion lit up Earth's night sky like a second sun. The shockwave from the flagship's death spread outward in all directions, smashing into the remaining Zephyrian vessels. Ships that had survived the battle in space were torn apart by debris moving at incredible speeds. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Jake watched the alien fleet die. The massive explosion had destroyed not just the flagship, but every remaining enemy vessel within 1,000 kilometers. Earth was safe, but the price had been terrible. "Damage report?" he asked quietly. Lisa Hart checked her instruments with hands that shook slightly. "Hull breaches on 15 decks. Main shields are completely offline. 2 of our fusion reactors are in emergency shutdown. Casualties? 43 crew members dead, sir. Another 100 wounded. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. 43 good people had died to save Earth. He would remember every name for the rest of his life. Sir, Ben Taylor called out from his station. Long-range sensors are detecting the surviving alien ships retreating from the outer system. They're jumping to hyperspace, Jake nodded. The battle was over, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Zephyrian Empire would not forget what had happened here today. Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system. Captain, we're getting reports from Earth. They want to know if we won. Jake looked at the tactical display where the debris field from the alien fleet continued to expand. Earth turned peacefully beneath them. It's 4 billion people safe for another day. Tell them yes, Tony, we won. But let them know this is just the start. The Empire will be back and they'll bring friends. Commander Hart approached Jake as he stood before the main view screen. What happens now, Captain? Jake thought about Admiral Vextar's final words. The alien had been confused and terrified in his last moments, unable to understand how his superior technology had been defeated by a species he considered primitive. Now we prepare for the next fight, Lisa, because the galaxy just learned that humanity doesn't surrender, and some species aren't going to like that lesson. The Vengeance limped toward Earth, her hull scarred by alien weapons but her crew victorious. They had faced impossible odds and won through skill, determination, and the kind of desperate courage that only comes when defending something worth dying for. But Jake Morrison knew their real work was just beginning. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in the only language the Predators understood. They had shown that Earth would fight for every life, every world, every star. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for what humanity had become. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, President Margaret Collins stood in a room that most people didn't know existed. The war room was built during the old Cold War, but it had been updated with the most advanced technology humanity possessed. Right now, that technology was showing her something that made her stomach turn cold with fear. The main display showed Luna Station's destruction over and over again. 8,000 people had been living their normal lives just hours ago. Now they were gone, erased by weapons that seemed like magic compared to anything humans had built. How many ships are we facing? President Collins asked the room full of military leaders. General Ryan Parker stepped forward. He was a tall man with gray hair who had served his country for 30 years. 27 vessels, Madam President. Our long-range scans show that each one is more advanced than our entire space fleet combined. Admiral Charles Brooks, the head of Earth's naval forces, looked at the tactical display with the expression of someone who had fought many battles. Their smallest ship could destroy any 10 of ours without taking damage. We're looking at technology that's centuries beyond what we have. Colonel Amy Johnson had been quiet until now, but she cleared her throat and stepped forward. She was the head of humanity's most secret project, something so classified that only 20 people on Earth knew it existed. Madam President, there is one option, she said carefully. Project Goliath. The room fell completely silent. Everyone in the war room had heard whispers about Goliath, but very few knew the details. It was humanity's greatest secret, hidden in the asteroid belt where no one would think to look. The Vengeance isn't ready, Collins said quietly. We're still months away from completing her. Colonel Johnson pulled up new information on the display. The image showed a massive ship under construction in a hidden facility among the asteroids. It was huge, bigger than anything humanity had ever built before. The primary systems are operational, Madam President. Main engines, primary weapons, defensive systems. She can fight. President Collins studied the display. The UES Vengeance was 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that pushed the limits of human engineering. It had been designed as Earth's ultimate protection, a ship so powerful that no enemy would dare attack humanity. Who would command her? Admiral Brooks asked. No one has experience with systems that advanced. That was when Captain Morrison's image appeared on the communication screen. He was still aboard the Liberty watching the alien fleet from a safe distance. I'll take her out, sir, Jake said firmly. I've studied every system aboard that ship for the past 2 years. My crew knows those systems better than anyone. Collins looked around the room at the faces of humanity's finest military minds. Each person was thinking the same thing. This was humanity's only chance, but it was also likely a suicide mission. How long before the Vengeance can launch? She asked. 72 hours, Colonel Johnson replied. We'll have to skip all the final testing, but she'll fly. General Parker frowned. That's cutting it very close. What if something goes wrong? Then we're no worse off than we are now, Jake said from the screen. At least we'll go down fighting. Collins walked to the window that looked out over the Colorado mountains. Somewhere above those peaks, an alien fleet was waiting for humanity to surrender. They thought humans were just another primitive species to be conquered and enslaved. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Make it happen, she said, turning back to the room. Get Captain Morrison and his crew to the asteroid belt as fast as possible. How many people can the Vengeance carry? 500 crew members, Johnson replied. All volunteers. Good. I want our best people on that ship. Collins paused and looked directly at Jake's image on the screen. Captain, do you understand what you're volunteering for? Jake's expression was grim but determined. Yes, Madam President. We're volunteering to show these aliens what happens when you murder human civilians. Within hours, the fastest ships in Earth's fleet were racing toward the asteroid belt. Jake and his crew from the Liberty were joined by volunteers from every branch of the military. These men and women knew they might never see Earth again. But they came anyway. The asteroid belt facility was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid called Ceres 7. From the outside, it looked like any other space rock. Inside, it was the most advanced shipyard humanity had ever built. When Jake first saw the Vengeance up close, he felt his breath catch in his throat. The ship was massive, her hull black as space itself and covered with weapons that could tear apart mountains. She looked like something built by a more advanced species, not the same humans who had only reached space a few decades ago. Commander Lisa Hart stood beside him as they walked through the ship's main hangar. My God, Jake, look at this thing. Chief Engineer Rodriguez was already examining the engine systems. Captain, these fusion reactors are putting out more power than a small star. I've never seen anything like it. Lieutenant Ben Taylor was at the sensor station, running diagnostics on equipment that could detect a coin-sized object from 1,000,000 miles away. Sir, these sensors can see through solid rock. They're showing me things I didn't even know existed. The crew worked around the clock to prepare the ship for launch. The Vengeance had been built using technology borrowed from a dozen different sources. Her armor was made from materials discovered in the outer solar system. Her weapons used principles that human scientists had only theorized about until recently. But the most important part of the ship wasn't her technology. It was her crew. 500 men and women who had volunteered to face impossible odds because someone had to stand up to the bullies. Captain Morrison walked through every section of the ship, meeting with his crew and making sure they understood their mission. In the engine room, he found Rodriguez working on the main power systems. Tony, can she do it? Jake asked. Can the Vengeance really fight those alien ships? Rodriguez looked up from his work with a grim smile. Captain, this ship has more firepower than the rest of human space fleet combined. If anyone can hurt those crystal bastards, it's us. In the weapons bay, Jake found Lieutenant Sarah Kim running final checks on the missile systems. She was young, barely out of the Space Academy, but she had the best targeting scores in fleet history. How are we looking, Lieutenant? Jake asked. The railguns are ready, sir. Fusion missiles are loaded. Point defense systems are online. She paused and looked at him seriously. Sir, these weapons are designed to crack planets. Are we really going to use them? Jake thought about the empty space where Luna Station used to be. Yes, Lieutenant. We're going to use every single one of them. The final hours before launch were tense. Reports kept coming in from Earth about panic in the streets and governments trying to figure out how to surrender to an alien empire. But in the hidden facility, 500 people worked with quiet determination to prepare humanity's response. Colonel Johnson found Jake in his ready room, studying tactical displays of the alien fleet. Captain, are you sure about this? She asked. We still don't know how advanced their defenses are. Jake looked up from the displays. Colonel, they murdered 8,000 civilians to make a point. They think we're going to roll over and surrender like every other species they've conquered. He stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the construction bay where the Vengeance waited. They're about to learn that humans are different. We don't surrender. We don't back down. And we sure as hell don't forget when someone kills our people. The launch countdown began 12 hours later. The Vengeance's engines came online with a sound like controlled thunder. Her systems reported green across the board. 500 crew members took their positions and prepared to show the galaxy what humanity was really made of. As the massive ship moved out of the asteroid belt toward the waiting alien fleet, Jake stood on his bridge and opened a communication channel to Earth. "This is Captain Morrison aboard the UES Vengeance. We're heading out to meet the enemy. Whatever happens next, remember this. Humanity doesn't kneel to anyone." The response came from President Collins herself. "Good hunting, Captain. Make them pay for Luna Station." The Vengeance accelerated toward the enemy fleet, her black hull invisible against the stars. The aliens had no idea what was coming for them. The stars had always seemed peaceful to Captain Jake Morrison as he guided his ship through the cold darkness of space. The UES Liberty was humanity's most advanced patrol vessel, built to explore the outer edges of the solar system and watch for anything unusual. Jake never expected that something unusual would find them first. The morning started like any other aboard the Liberty. Commander Lisa Hart checked the sensor readings while drinking her coffee in the ship's small mess hall. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez ran his daily checks on the engine systems. Lieutenant Ben Taylor monitored space traffic near Mars and Jupiter. Everything was normal and quiet. Jake was reviewing star charts in his ready room when the ship's alarm system began screaming. The sound cut through the peaceful silence like a knife. He rushed to the bridge where Lisa was staring at her sensor display with wide eyes. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, in a voice that barely stayed calm. 27 objects just appeared at the edge of our solar system. "They're big, sir. Really big." Jake looked at the main screen where the computer was trying to make sense of what the sensors were detecting. The objects were massive, each one the size of a small city. They had appeared without warning, as if they had stepped out of empty space itself. "Are they ships?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing natural could be that large and move with such purpose." "Yes, sir. And they're not human," Lisa replied. "The computer can't identify the materials they're made from. They look like they're built from some kind of crystal." The bridge crew worked quickly to gather more information. The unknown ships hung in perfect formation near Pluto's orbit. They didn't move toward Earth, but they didn't move away either. They just waited, like predators studying their prey. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Ben from the communications station. "It's coming from the largest ship in their formation." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main display flickered and showed a face that would haunt Jake's dreams for years to come. The alien was tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed to glow with its own light. Its eyes were large and dark, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass. "Primitive species of the third planet," the alien said in broken English. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. You will submit to our authority. Your world and your people now belong to us. You have one rotation of your star to surrender your leaders." Jake felt his blood turn cold. The alien's words were calm and matter-of-fact, as if it was discussing the weather rather than the conquest of humanity. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth Space Force," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "You are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The sound that came through the speakers next was worse than any scream. It was laughter, cold and cruel and filled with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. "Consequences," Admiral Vextar repeated. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Your entire species cannot stand against the might of the Empire. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Yours will be no different." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "We'll see about that." The alien's expression didn't change. "You require demonstration of our power. Very well." The transmission ended and the main screen returned to showing the alien fleet. One of the ships, a sleek vessel that looked like it was carved from a single piece of blue crystal, began to glow with building energy. "Captain, they're targeting Luna Station," Lisa said with growing panic in her voice. Luna Station was humanity's largest space facility, built on the moon's surface. 8,000 people lived and worked there, including scientists, engineers, and their families. It was a symbol of human achievement in space. "Broadcast a warning to Luna Station," Jake ordered. "Tell them to evacuate immediately." But there wasn't time. The alien ship's main weapon fired a beam of pure energy that crossed the space between Earth and the moon in seconds. The beam struck Luna Station and the entire facility simply vanished in a flash of white light. 8,000 lives ended in an instant. The bridge of the Liberty fell silent. Every person aboard the ship stared at the empty space where Luna Station used to be. The moon itself now had a glowing crater where humanity's greatest achievement once stood. "My God," whispered Tony Rodriguez. Admiral Vextar's voice filled the bridge again. "This is what happens to those who resist the Empire. Submit now, or your planet will share the same fate. Jake looked around at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else. Anger, determination, the same feeling that was burning in his own chest. Open a channel to Earth Command, he ordered. Priority Alpha. Within minutes, Jake was speaking directly to General Ryan Parker at Space Command headquarters. The general's face appeared on a smaller screen, and Jake could see the same mix of shock and rage that he felt. General, they just destroyed Luna Station, Jake reported. 8,000 people are dead. The aliens are demanding our surrender. I saw it, Captain, Parker replied grimly. The president is calling an emergency session right now. How long do we have? They gave us 24 hours, Jake said. That's not enough time to evacuate Earth, Parker said. And even if we could, where would we go? Jake looked back at the main screen where the alien ships continued their patient wait. They were confident that humanity would surrender, just like all the other species they had conquered. They had no idea what they had just awakened. General, there is one option, Jake said quietly. Project Goliath. Parker's expression grew even more serious. The Vengeance isn't ready. She's still months away from completion. Her main systems are operational, Jake replied. She can fight. Who would command her? No one has experience with those systems. Jake straightened in his command chair. I will, sir. My crew and I will take her out. Parker stared at him through the screen for a long moment. Captain, you know what you're asking for. That ship is untested. The weapon systems alone could tear her apart. Yes, sir. But it's better than surrendering to those monsters. The general nodded slowly. I'll speak to the president. Stand by for orders. As the communication ended, Jake turned to face his crew. They were looking at him with a mixture of fear and hope. Sir, Lisa said quietly. What's Project Goliath? Jake smiled grimly. Our ace in the hole, Commander. The one thing the aliens don't know about. Outside the ship, the alien fleet continued its silent vigil. They had no idea that humanity was about to show them what 8,000 murdered civilians really meant to a species that had never learned how to quit. The U.S. Vengeance hung in Earth orbit like a battered guardian angel, her black hull scarred by alien weapons, but her mission complete. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge watching the blue world turn slowly beneath them, while rescue ships approached from the planet's surface. The battle was over, but its consequences were just beginning to spread across the galaxy. 3 days after the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet, Jake found himself in the same underground war room where humanity's desperate gamble had been planned. President Margaret Collins sat at the head of a conference table surrounded by military, leaders and scientists who were still trying to understand what they had accomplished. The debris analysis is complete, reported Dr. Helen Carter, Earth's leading expert on alien technology. The Zephyrian ships were built using materials we've never seen before. Their energy weapons operated on principles our physics textbooks say are impossible. General Ryan Parker leaned forward in his chair. But we destroyed them anyway. How? Dr. Carter pulled up technical displays that showed the internal structure of the alien vessels. Their technology was more advanced than ours in every way except one. They had never encountered kinetic weapons moving at the speeds our railguns can achieve. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles moving at 30% light speed. Admiral Charles Brooks studied the tactical recordings from the battle. It wasn't just the weapons. Our entire approach was different from what they expected. They were used to fighting enemies who followed their rules. Jake nodded slowly. They expected us to surrender after they demonstrated their power. When we didn't, they didn't know how to adapt. Colonel Amy Johnson had been monitoring communications from across the solar system. Captain, we're receiving reports from our deep space monitoring stations. Word of the battle is spreading fast. She activated a display that showed signal intercepts from dozens of different alien civilizations. The news of the Zephyrian Empire's defeat was racing across the galaxy at the speed of light. What are they saying? President Collins asked. Johnson translated the alien communications. Most of them are in disbelief. The Zephyrian Empire has been the dominant power in this region for 3,000 years. Many species think the reports of their defeat must be false. And the others? Some are celebrating. The Empire had enslaved or destroyed hundreds of worlds. But others are worried about what comes next. Jake understood their concern. They're afraid of us now. Should they be? Collins asked quietly. Jake looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. These were good people who had been forced to make terrible choices to protect their species. But the galaxy didn't know that. All they knew was that a previously unknown species had destroyed the Empire's fleet with a single ship. That depends on them, Jake replied. If they leave us alone and treat us with respect, they have nothing to fear. But if they think they can pick up where the Empire left off... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room had seen what the Vengeance could do. Dr. Carter pulled up new information on her displays. We've been analyzing the alien technology we recovered from the battle. Their computers contain star charts showing the locations of hundreds of inhabited worlds. How many species are out there? Collins asked. At least 50 different civilizations within 1,000 light-years of Earth. Some are more advanced than the Zephyrians were. Others are barely spacefaring. Admiral Brooks frowned. Are any of them threats to Earth? Unknown, Carter replied. But we did find something interesting in the Empire's records. They kept detailed files on every species they encountered, including their military capabilities and weaknesses. She brought up a file that made everyone in the room stare in surprise. It was labeled Humans Species Analysis. Classification Primitive No Threat. Jake read the alien assessment of humanity and felt a cold smile cross his face. The report described humans as a young species with limited technology and no significant military capability. It recommended that Earth be conquered with minimal force and its population used as manual labor. The report had been written just 6 months ago. They had no idea what they were walking into, General Parker observed. No, Jake agreed. And neither does anyone else out there. President Collins stood and walked to a window that looked out over the Colorado mountains. Somewhere above those peaks, the wreckage of the alien fleet was still being collected by salvage crews. What's our next move? She asked. Colonel Johnson had been working on that question since the battle ended. We have several options. We could try to contact other civilizations and establish diplomatic relations. We could focus on improving our defenses in case someone else decides to test us, or, Collins prompted, we could send a message to the galaxy that humanity is not to be trifled with. Jake understood what she was suggesting. You want to take the fight to them? Not exactly. But the Empire had military bases and slave colonies throughout this region of space. Those facilities are now undefended. If we liberated them, we would be helping oppressed species while demonstrating our capabilities. Admiral Brooks considered the idea. It would certainly get the galaxy's attention. And it would give us allies, Jake added. Species that have reason to be grateful to humanity rather than afraid of us. President Collins turned back to face the room. How many ships like the Vengeance can we build? Dr. Carter consulted her technical reports. With the alien technology we've recovered, we could have 5 more ships operational within a year. 10 within 2 years, and do it. I want a fleet that can protect Earth and help our potential allies. Jake felt a surge of pride at the president's words. Humanity wasn't going to hide behind Earth's defenses and hope the galaxy left them alone. They were going to take an active role in shaping their corner of space. There's one more thing, Colonel Johnson said quietly. We intercepted a transmission from the surviving Zephyrian ships before they jumped to hyperspace. It was a distress call to their home system. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. How long before reinforcements arrive? Collins asked, unknown. The Empire's home system is at least 50 light-years away. But they have faster ships than we do. Jake stood up from his chair. Then we better get started. The next time they come for us, they won't underestimate humanity. 6 months later, the galaxy had learned to fear and respect the name human. The UES Vengeance led a small but growing fleet in a campaign that liberated 12 worlds from Imperial control. Each victory brought new allies to Earth's cause and demonstrated that the Empire's defeat had not been a fluke. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship as they approached another Imperial base. This one was built in an asteroid field and used as a prison camp for political dissidents from a dozen different species. Sensors are showing 3,000 life forms on that base, reported Lieutenant Ben Taylor. Mostly non-combatants. Defensive capabilities? Jake asked. Lieutenant Sarah Kim checked her weapons display. Minimal. They're not expecting an attack. Jake opened a communication channel to the Imperial base. This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. You are holding prisoners in violation of interstellar law. Release them immediately and evacuate your personnel. The response came from a Zephyrian commander who sounded nervous. Human vessel, this is a lawful Imperial facility. You have no authority here. Actually, we do, Jake replied calmly. "The authority comes from having bigger guns than you do." The base commander's voice cracked with fear. "Please, we surrender. Don't destroy us like you destroyed Admiral Vextar's fleet. Then release the prisoners and leave. You have 30 minutes. As Jake watched the Imperial personnel evacuate their base, he reflected on how much had changed since that first contact with the alien fleet. Humanity had gone from being an unknown species facing extinction to being one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. Commander Lisa Hart joined him at the main view screen. "Jake, do you ever wonder if we're becoming the thing we fought against?" Jake considered her question carefully. "The difference is choice, Lisa. The Empire conquered and enslaved because they thought they had the right. We fight to protect people who can't protect themselves. And when we're done liberating everyone," Jake smiled, "then we go home and enjoy the peace we've earned. But something tells me the galaxy won't let us retire that easily." As if summoned by his words, Ben Taylor called out from his station, "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet entering the system. Configuration matches Imperial vessels, but they're much larger than anything we've seen before." Jake felt familiar anticipation flow through his veins. The Empire had finally sent their first-line warships to deal with humanity. This would be the real test of whether humans could stand against the galaxy's greatest military power. "All hands, battle stations," he ordered. "Looks like we're about to find out if the Empire learned anything from their last encounter with us." The communication system crackled to life with a transmission from the approaching fleet. The voice that emerged was cold and filled with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "Human vessel. This is Fleet Admiral Kexavon of the Imperial First Fleet. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed."